an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Dark, Season 1, Episode 9. Everything is now. In this episode, shit is going so far left, all of a sudden. So far left. Guys, I truly am flabbergasted by this show sometimes, and I mean that in the very best way. They just keep on pulling out new shit, and it doesn't feel like forced or contrived at all. I feel like by the end of the season, I'm going to be completely turned around on where I thought this was going. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. First of all, I want to shout out Jill for commissioning this episode. Thank you, Jill. I am so happy to be covering 2 this week. I feel like this is a real treat. This episode, y'all, I thought the last one was shocking, and it sure was, in that Ulrich is apparently capable of some shit that I never thought. But honestly, again, when I talk about, I've said before in other episodes of other things, that there are a lot of tropes and a lot of expectations that are so ingrained in us that we don't even realize that we expect them until things go a different way. It's not even it's not even a conscious prediction of a plot point. It's like you just figure, well, this is what's going to happen. So assuming that, blank, blank, blank. And you just don't even stop to think if that's correct, if that will happen. Ulrich being arrested for doing something, and they haven't found his body yet, so they can't charge him with murder, but being arrested for doing something to Helge, knocked me over with a feather. I never thought that he would get nailed for that. I mean, it's really, and this is something that so many other shows that I have watched could take a hint from. Him choosing not to immediately go back into the cave and head back into his own time might seem, in a slightly different scenario or with a slightly different character, completely ridiculous. Dude, you committed a fucking murder. I don't care what time this is in. Get out of there. But with Ulrich, the fact that he just sits outside the bunker where he has planted the body of a fucking child that he murdered, it makes total sense to me that he would lose track of time just sitting there in shock, essentially, at what he had done. And the fact that he's just it's like he's so not really thinking through the fact that what he did might have consequences for him in this time, that I feel like that seems like he's sort of thinking about this place and this time the same way that the audience is, which is to say that he is acting like he's a tourist here and that he can just bounce back home and is taking it for granted that whatever happens here, they won't be able to pin anything to him. But because he is so slow about the way he chooses to get out, and because of the fact that he's assuming, well, I can murder this kid and change everything, and that is definitely a huge consequence. But he doesn't seem to assume I might be subjected to similarly huge consequences. It really mirrors the way that I was watching the episode. I don't know how many of you, or for me, when I talk about time travel shows, and I've said before, and not just shows, but movies and books as well, time travel is a really tough thing to write about. And it is a very tough thing as a reader or a viewer to sort of like get with when you're in a new property initially, because the rules of time travel in different universes are so different. So there was a point when I was talking last episode about him having, like thinking that he killed Helge and thinking that he like changed something when in fact he hadn't actually managed to change anything, where I sort of wondered if this was a universe in which things could be changed, because it seems like everybody who comes into the past is accomplishing a thing that our characters have seen in the future, no question. It doesn't feel like anything is altering stuff in the future all of a sudden, you know, in the way that, like, if, for example, Jonas were to try and bring back Mikkel to the present, what exactly would that look like? Would Jonas just fade away? Is this a universe in which that is even a possibility? Is this a universe in which that sort of tampering is even written into the rules? I don't know how this works. There are some universes in which people are in the past messing with things, and in the present, cars disappear because nobody invented cars. You know, like, just like that kind of shit happens. And it's tough to know without having actually seen anyone try it, but I get the impression that's not what the show is trying to do at all. This show is really focused on the fact that everything is so intertwined and intertwined in such a way that you can't change anything. That, like, that is the challenge, is how delicate the balance is of events, that it's all so interconnected already, and that you might think that you're doing something to change history, when in fact you're just actually doing the thing that had occurred in history in your version of the present as well, and you just weren't aware that you were the one who made this happen. So you're playing right into the hands of fate, kind of. So yeah, the fact that Ulrich gets arrested, I just was screaming. I couldn't believe that he got gripped up, and by fucking Egon. Y'all, Egon knows who Ulrich is in the present, in a way. I don't think he's looking at him and he's like, this is clearly the kid that grows up to be the guy that I arrested when I was, you know, in 1953. But there is something about Ulrich that sticks with him, and he is seeing it again. And it is so amazing to me to have his, like, prejudice against Ulrich explained in a way that is so concrete, really, but also very psychological, because it's sort of like, you know, a version of when we go through certain experiences and traumas when we are young with a certain type of person. If we run into that type of person again, we will assume a lot of the same things about them that we learned from the first encounter with someone like this. And yet, knowing that all of this experience that he is basing his judgments of Ulrich on are experiences that are brushing up against time travel and are actually experiences based on the same person as who he is currently looking at, is just such a mindfuck. You know, it really is. I just love this. So, all right, I'm jumping all over the place, and we're going to get to some other shit. I promise. But I did want to mention, so last episode, I kind of ran out of time. I had said something about how I didn't really know when we started things off exactly where this show was going in its overall, like, goal. and that I felt like I had started to catch on to it while I was watching this one. Pardon me, I'm going to clean my glasses because I'm having trouble seeing my screen. And then I said all this about how I felt like I was finally getting it, and then I fucking never even talked about it. So it seems as if older Jonas, which is what I'm going to continue to say he is, even though I do not know that, older Jonas is realizing, he calls when he's talking to the scientist, whose name I'm forgetting, he calls their town a gaping wound, and says something about how he needs to fix it, how he needs to close the wormhole in town. And this is brought up again this episode, except it is Claudia's mother, or is it, I think, right? And she is saying a similar thing. She's the one who brings him the plans for this machine. I am loving, by the way, the inclusion of this crazy looking old lady. But she, like, what it seems like is happening is that the people who know that there is a wormhole, who are not Noah, are really, they feel like this wormhole is somehow toxic and feeding into, and I don't mean toxic literally, like the toxic waste. I just mean this being available to go in and out of is messing with the very fabric of who they are as people, as a community, and their sanity and their trust in one another as well, because shit is happening that it's a genuine conspiracy that's going on, you know? So it's just this goal of, I'm going to destroy the wormhole. It never even occurred to me that somebody would want to do that, because I never thought you could do that. I didn't know it was an option. But if it is an option, I support this 100%, because this wormhole is just causing nothing but pain and heartache to everybody who encounters it. Like, it's awful. So it's not like we don't have enough complications in our forward linear lives as it is. We don't need to be adding shit like this, you know? So we start off the episode with the, you know, man has always contemplated his origins, where he comes from, who created him, what his purpose is, yada, yada, yada. And we get a close-up of the faces of all of the characters in the different stages of their lives, most of them. So we then go to the 1953, the location of where the power company is supposed to go. And his mother, Helge's mother, is considering that maybe she was too hard on him about getting his pants dirty, that she was like too harsh, and that he ran away as a result. And it's a really well acted scene, because this woman is clearly in a lot of pain, but is also on lock, like so hard. And people like this, my father was like this. You could see, if you were good at reading people, you could see just below the surface the boiling rage that was constantly there. Not at you, necessarily. It was just something that they lived with. And this veneer of calm over it that was cold. It was a frozen sort of persona to cover a molten interior. It was a weird thing. And I feel like she gets that across really well. And we find out later in a scene in which she is talking to Noah, of all fucking people, that there is a good chance Helge is not even her husband's child. And she says something about how he wasn't born out of love, he was. And I mean, the assumption here is that she was raped by somebody. She doesn't say who or what happened, but it would really go a long way in explaining the rage that it seems like she's keeping at bay at all times, and her attitude toward her son being so distant and disdainful. She doesn't necessarily want him. You know, she tells Noah she went through a period where she hoped that she would miscarry, and then when she had the baby, she hoped something would happen to him. And now that it looks like something has, she feels horribly guilty, like she somehow brought this about. And this is one of those things that, like, as a kid, when I would reach plot lines like this, where somebody was like, I wished for something to happen that was terrible, and then it did happen, and I feel bad about it, even though I know rationally I did not cause it, I would always just be like, oh, get out of here. Yeah, you didn't cause it. Just get over it. But now as a grown-up, I get it a lot more. The whole, like, this deep feeling in your gut that, like, didn't I? Didn't I, though? Like, did I? I mean, the fact that you wanted something like this to happen in the first place, doesn't that make you, like, low-key complicit? She's just got a real complicated road ahead. And I am deeply curious about who Helge's father really is, because she says that maybe he wasn't born out of love, so I'm assuming it was rape, but I might not be on track with that. And it could be any number of people. It could be somebody from the future, even, that we are going to see come back, you know, who knows? But yeah, so her husband is leaving to go and tell the police about this. And then we go to the bunker. And fucking Ulrich is still there, sitting outside, staring at it, his hands covered in blood, just fucking still, and shaking. And I was like, look, Ulrich, I get it. You think you just murdered a child. Even if you didn't succeed in the murder, you still beat him almost to death. You should be shaking. You should be in shock. You should be almost unable to move. But you know what? You don't get that luxury, dude. You need to fucking run. If you meant to accomplish what you thought you were, which is to save your son, getting locked in prison in the past isn't going to lead to your son ever being conceived. So be careful, buddy, about this. But I didn't expect it to actually lead to anything. I really didn't think that he was going to get caught. I thought he was going to make it to the fucking cave. You know? Egon comes into the police station, and I don't know who it was that he was speaking with. Was it the mayor? Because it doesn't look like another police officer, but he says, Doppler's here in your office, says his boy has disappeared. Maybe you were right about there being more to come. And Egon says that there was a man here yesterday who said that his son had disappeared. He wanted to know if one of the dead children was his boy, and he asked about Helge Doppler. And this dude is like, oh, really? Well, yeah, fucking put out an APB. We are going to fucking find this dude. And Egon winds up running across him himself on the fucking street. And it's this really great moment. Because, first of all, I just want to say that I was pleased about Mr. Doppler's response to losing his son, because I was kind of expecting him to be a bit of a bastard about this. But he says that he wants his kid back no matter what it costs, even if it's like at the risk of the power plant. So I appreciated that he is willing to sacrifice like this for his child, because not every parent, we like to think that parents, this is just their instinct to care about their kids above everything else. That is not necessarily true. It just isn't. That tends to be the majority of parents, but it is by no means a small group who is willing to sacrifice the well-being of their children for their own gain. It is shockingly common, and it shows itself in all kinds of ways. But I just wasn't totally sure how I felt about Mr. Doppler, and I'm glad to be given this little piece of character that he really does give a shit. So, yeah, we get to the scene where Egon is driving on the road and is passing Ulrich and realizes, oh my God, this is the dude. I can't believe it. He's right here. And he stops his car, and you see Ulrich look, see that it's a police car, see Egon like getting out, and then turn and go sprinting into the woods. This is the second time that he has had to sprint in several hours. And I wasn't like, you've got the fear of God in you at this point. So despite that, I sort of, for a minute, I was like, he is going to fucking be so exhausted. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. And then I was like, yeah, but he's not going to get caught. Come on, Tosh. Well, guess what happens? He's running straight on, and Egon is watching him and figures out, oh, I know where this motherfucker's going. He's trying to head to that cave where he can hide. And he is running towards it flat out, and Egon comes flying out from the left. He cut him off and pulls his gun and manages to get him to stop. And, I mean, it is tough, guys. He is like 20 feet away from the entrance of the cave. This is rough. And when this is one of the best moments to me of the show so far is Ulrich has just found out that like this time travel thing is real. He has just found out about a literal wormhole in his town. But he is so convinced that he knows how it works already that when Egon asks him, what did you do to the two boys at the construction site? He turns around in total shock and says, the two boys, that's impossible. They can't be there. I changed that. And Egon says, what did you change? And he says, the course of time. Helge is dead. Helge will never be able to kill again. And Egon says, you're a madman, and arrests him. And you can see Ulrich's face. Like, he is dropping into despair, just repeating to himself, but I changed it. But I changed it. So I love this. He has no experience with this at all, but he is so certain that he knows how this works and that he has like figured it out. It seems that he believes that Helge did something to his kid and that God stepped forward and was like, I will lead you to a place in which you can keep this from happening to your son and anyone else. I will take you into the past so that you can righteously kill the person responsible for this and many other crimes. He really does seem to feel that this like wormhole was put here for his express use. And it does not seem to have entered his mind that maybe Mikkel, since he went into these caves also, found the same thing that he found. And I am just waiting for him to have that thought. Because I feel like if he does, it's going to blow his mind. I don't know what he'll do if he suddenly realizes, because there's no reason for him to know that it goes to different points in time. So he may become newly, if he gets out of jail, this is all predicated on that. He may have a new mission of trying to find Mikkel in this era, because he is now convinced maybe Mikkel is here and will start this search that we know won't be turning up anything. So yeah, I am very, very curious about this. And I really love that we get to see Ulrich behaving in a way that I think is extremely true to human nature. I think it is something that we could kind of expect if there was a person who had been hurt by somebody and they really seemed to believe they knew who did it. If they get the opportunity to go back in time and keep it from happening, of course they are going to do it. Now, I say of course they're going to do it on the assumption that it's something reasonable they're going to do, not kill a kid. This takes it to a new level. How many of us would be able to do this? I am somebody who does not believe in like predestination or fate. I think that there are things that the course of our lives tend towards this happening, but they're not by any means like set in stone. And if I knew that there was a guy who committed a murder and I met him as a child, I don't think that I would trust that killing him was the way to solve the problem. I feel like I would hope that I could do something that was nonviolent to get through to him and keep him from following the path that he winds up on. And I don't know what that looks like, but I just don't see myself being willing to hurt a child and think that that is something that would like help the world in the end. I don't know that it would, you know. You can start all kinds of other chain reactions. And I just don't know what happens like what happens with the parents of the child you killed. Like, how do they handle their grief and what do they go out into the world and do? So there's all kinds of like the cracks spread, you know, like getting a rock in your windshield. There's a tiny little crack of this thing that to you seems tremendous that happened. And in trying to fix that little crack, you wind up pressing on it and spreading it and making it worse. So Michael says nobody ever talks about going back in time to adopt baby Hitler. Like, maybe that should be something that we talk about, you know, like killing baby Hitler. The thing about somebody like Hitler is that he was a horrifying human being, but the country that followed him was prepared to follow somebody with the ideas that he had. And I have a hard time believing that he was the only one who had them. And it's sort of like people who really want Trump out of office. Would that be nice? Yes. Do I think that solves our problem as a country? Really don't. And that bigger picture is the thing I feel like people want to blame one person, because that is extremely simple and nice to think about. That if this person was just taken out as a factor, we wouldn't have to worry about any of this. But it's not true. They are a symptom. They are not the problem. And yeah, I don't know. So this whole thing with him is just blowing my mind, and I'm so interested to find out what the fuck goes on with him. Meanwhile, down in the bunker, we see poor Helge finally waking up, covered in blood. And as he wakes up, this machine that the clockmaker had been working on, there are like three, I'm trying to think of what you want to call these. I guess they're like dials, but the dials, they look as if they're like pressed into the surface of this machine. They expand until they are like small towers, and these tiles on the outside of them are in different colors, and it feels like that has some kind of meaning to it, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that meaning is. So we cut then to a dude who is sprinting through the woods. He's got a mask over his face. He's carrying a bag and has a gunshot wound and a gun. I think that I assumed, to be honest, that the bag he was carrying was full of money. But I realize now that I don't know that that's true, because I thought he was fleeing from a like bank robbery. Or, you know, not necessarily, but it looked like he had just robbed a place. It's the mask and the gun. It feels like a stick 'em up. And later on, when he buries that bag, it's got his actual passport and stuff in it. And his gun. But I don't know if he like held on to the money or what happened there. And we find out eventually that he is now Alexander, the man who runs the power plant. And he has changed his name and like completely created this like new identity. And it is bonkers. What a weird twist. So we'll get to that. At this point, we go to fucking Hannah as a child talking to Katerina. Guys, I might have to take back what I said about not killing a child to keep them from doing some shit. Because Katerina, you should just kill this girl. You should. You clearly have some rage issues and you want to take them out. Do it. Kill her. She's going to cause you nothing but heartache. And Hannah, you deserve it, like 1,000%. Katerina is talking about how Ulrich is being released, how she doesn't know who could have given them up, like who could have given Ulrich up and lied. And Hannah says, maybe it was Regina. I mean, Tiedemann is her grandfather. So she could have said something to him at any point. And Katerina doesn't really seem to think that there could be an ulterior motive to Hannah saying this to her. It doesn't even occur to her. And I find that really telling because it's proving to us that A, she doesn't seem aware of Hannah's infatuation with Ulrich or seem to consider her any sort of threat at all. B, she underestimates Hannah's wiliness and ability to manipulate. And C, she is very willing to believe something of a person that she already doesn't like, in this case, Regina. I mean, that's true of all of us, right? I like to think that I am able to step back and be like, am I being fair right now, or do I just not like this person? And sometimes I do manage to do that, but it's not always. So she is evidently really like takes this to heart right away, to the point that she and Ulrich decide to get together to fucking bully and beat the shit out of Regina in a scene that I confess I thought was going to go very, very differently. I really was worried about, like, it's not that she doesn't hurt Regina at all, but she manages to be stopped before really, like, because, you know, the lengths that people will go to when they're angry, sometimes you don't wind up actually like killing somebody, but you do damage that's like just as bad and long lasting. So she's in the middle of this fucking like kneeing poor Regina in the stomach because she doesn't believe her. And this dude just comes up out of the woods and is like, leave her alone and apologize. And Katerina is just like, give me a fucking break. And he pulls out a gun and cocks it and says, apologize. And she says, how do I know it's real? And he like drops the clip out of it and shows her the bullets in it and puts it back in, all without even looking at the gun. I really want to point this out. He knows what he is doing with this weapon. This is not his first fucking time. And he is stone cold doing it too. Like, he is staring at her with eyes that he would shoot her 100%. And I don't know that is true about him as a character. I know that's what he is showing to Katerina. That, yeah, no, I will shoot you. Not a problem for me. Whatever. Just apologize. It does not have to be this hard. And I love the coldness of it all. I love that he comes out here like a fucking avenging angel to defend Regina. And it makes total sense that Regina winds up marrying him, because I bet that he acts as her protector a lot throughout her life. And now looking back, because the context of this conversation changes something pretty dramatically for me. Before he shows up, they're talking with Regina makes it sound very tame. They're yelling at Regina and having an argument with her about her telling on them lying about Ulrich, and acting like she is doing this in retaliation for them tying her to a tree in the woods. My assumption up until this point was that they tied her to a tree in the woods in retaliation because they thought she had lied about Ulrich. When we came to this scene in the show where they were like ganging up on her and about to like hurt her, up until Katerina mentions, we would have untied you. We weren't intending to leave you there all night. We didn't know you were so fucking delicate. Before she says that, I thought that was going to be what this scene was. I thought they were going to show us her and Ulrich tying Regina to a tree. And finding out that they just did that just to fuck with her, completely separate from his accusation, and now them beating the shit out of her. That is a whole other situation, because I don't condone tying somebody to a tree and leaving them in the woods to scare the life out of them. But if they thought she had lied about rape, it would be a lot more excusable to me to be like, dude, that's a really serious thing to lie about. You could have destroyed his life, and their rage about this is especially understandable, and ultimately you weren't hurt and probably would not have been hurt. But finding out now that this retaliation they were about to do here was one in a line of other times that they have harassed her and bullied her, it doesn't feel like they need a reason to go after her. So I was really giving them the benefit of the doubt that there was a cause to the incident in the woods. And it turns out there wasn't, other than their own sadistic enjoyment of fucking with somebody and hurting them. So I have to say that my sympathy for the two of them as characters plummeted a little bit here. And my understanding of why Regina is so angry in the present went up. It was still understandable why she's so angry, even assuming that they did tie her up in retaliation for her lying, even though she didn't, because she didn't do it and she knows she didn't do it. So on her end, it does feel like there's no reason for it, even though I had thought there was. But now realizing that there wasn't any reason for it, that had not even happened yet, it's just, yeah, no wonder. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not mad at Katerina for beating the shit out of her at the school in the present, because she really should have kept her mouth shut. She really should have. This woman did just lose her child. It has been 20 years, 33 years, whatever. She is going through some shit, and she is volatile, and you know that already from experience. Just fucking don't say anything if you don't want to get your ass whooped, lady. But also, she was sort of proving the point of like, you know, this is who your mother really is. Like, you're finally getting to see this. This is what she was like, and she still is. How about that? So yeah, this dude who saves Regina, like, collapses as soon as Ulrich and Katerina run off. And she offers to help him. And it's pretty fucking adorable, honestly. And I can understand, too, immediately, like, falling for this dude. Because he is attractive. He has real bad boy allure. He turns up and swoops in and saves you. I mean, he is ticking all the boxes for somebody that's like straight out of a fucking fantasy romance novel here. So yeah, Regina, I get it. It's amazing to know what he grows up into because he just does not maintain this sort of vibe at all. But, you know, it's all right. Meanwhile, I forgot to mention, when we go back, there's the scene of Ulrich's dad walking with what's her name, and they're still looking for the dog that ran away. And there is, in the present, Claudia going through all of the tunnels, exploring this place, and then the dog runs out. And she recognizes the dog and knows that it is her dog from 33 years ago, or at this, I guess, 66 years ago. And it's just like, wait, what the fuck? No, it is 33 years ago, right? Yeah. No. Yeah, because that's 86. Which, God, what a mind fuck. And I love that she recognizes the dog and knows it's her dog right away. Like, I feel like that is something that you could make a mistake. There are plenty of animals that look so similar. I've seen people post pictures of cats that I would swear that was my cat. But there is something about like that moment of just being like, no, I am dead certain this is the same fucking animal. And no, it doesn't make any sense, but it is. There is no question in my mind. And then we go to Agnes, who is apparently like trying to give Egon's wife a new dress. Now, guys, I'm unclear about this. It feels like initially I wanted to say that she knew Egon and that she was like trying to insinuate herself into his life in order to get something out of him because he had maybe like had a dalliance with her and left her. But then the way that she is treating his wife, and if anybody can help me with his wife's name, I have forgotten, but she seems to be kind of coming on to her. And I can't tell if that's sincere or if she's just trying to kind of fuck with her. But yeah, his wife comes out wearing this chartreuse, like knee-length gown that honestly, the color does not do much for her. But the cut of the dress is very pretty and very like, much more dramatic and fashionable than anything else she had been wearing. And when Agnes stands up, I mean, she is rocking this fucking dark teal bodycon dress with like this brooch. I mean, she looks amazing. She looks so gorgeous. And her son, when he was talking with the daughter said something about how your mother is so beautiful. I have never seen anyone so elegant. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I could see that being really impressive in this town because it doesn't feel like she fits the mold in terms of the kind of life that she has led or the style that she has. So she is looking at her friend in the mirror, tying the, like, there's a neckline sort of bow, and she tries to give her the dress. She says, it's yours. And the wife says, no, what would Egon say? And she says, what could he say? And she turns and stands in front of her and sort of fixes the belt to be a little bit tighter. And there's this like tension here with this contact between the two of them. And his wife begins to ask Agnes about how long she's been married, whether she misses him. And Agnes says that her husband was a pastor, but he was not a man of God or of faith. And that he was not really a good person either. And she is in the middle of like fastening the back of her dress. And again, all of this close contact. Sometimes I think it's good he's dead. And she puts her chin on the woman's shoulder and says, and that I'm free. And gives her a sort of intimate look. And this lady runs off and is like, I'm sorry, I can't. I need to take this off. And I am assuming still that Egon's wife is interested, but is flipped out by the mere idea because, of course, you know, especially in this era, like, that's a tough thing to come to terms with. So then we jump to Noah. And of course, when Agnes is talking about what her husband is like, you are assuming it's Noah, right? Like, if it turns out to not be Noah, I won't be mad, because a man of God who turns out to not be a man of God or of faith and who is not a good person, it's not exactly hard to come by those. That's fucking, there are plenty. But it feels that the show is very much telling us that he is the one. And he winds up playing a much bigger role this episode than he has in the past. We'll get to this. I am running out of time, guys. There's so much to fucking talk about. I'm going to jump to Claudia talking to her boss. We find out that the toxic waste that was put into that cave was a result of an accident, like an incident, as they keep calling it, that they knew was going to bring up a lot of safety questions in the community, and they just straight up did not want to deal with it. So they packed up all of the waste and put it somewhere else. And it should be noted that she uses a Geiger counter when she's in the cave, and that shit's going off. It is no joke. This waste is very dangerous. But they're out here trying to act like just putting it in the ground here is enough, that it's just fine and out of the way and something that we don't need to worry about. He calls it like we put it somewhere safe. And she was like, you called that safe? Like, are you serious? And as far as he's concerned, yeah, she had to literally rappel down into a hole to find it. He thinks that's enough. But like, dude, it's not even sealed. The storage area isn't even sealed from the world. It's an open top. Like, what are you doing? And she is deeply, deeply uncomfortable with continuing to keep this secret. And he tells her that a lot of the people who helped them move this stuff into storage, that they were paid off. And one of the people was Helge. And he says, like, Helge, that they were given nice bonuses and they have agreed not to say anything. So that could be part of why Helge is involved with the thing with like the body later, but that's like a time travel thing. So I don't know if the nuclear power plant is part of the time travel thing directly. I had been assuming that they had caused an incident indirectly because of something to do with an incident and this nuclear waste. But it doesn't, like, now I'm starting to rethink that. I don't know. Maybe they were directly involved. Maybe this project is the result of a time travel thing. Who knows? And so in this meeting, with, I think this is Helge's father, if I'm not mistaken. She asks him if there had been any other incidents, and he seems to kind of know what she's getting at and sort of like taunts her about believing in stories, and then ends it with, you choose what the narrative is for the rest of the community. So pick the story carefully. So we see back in, I believe, 86, we see Helge coming up out of the bunker. And he's got like a belt with him and a bucket. Like, it looks like he was like cleaning up from that fucking scary room. And then we see old Helge in the woods watching himself. And I was dying. They don't wind up coming in contact this episode. And I was really hopeful that there would be something there, but there isn't. And this just leads to a scene in which older Egon comes to try and speak to Helge about why he took the forest path. And Helge basically hides. And we know that he never wound up speaking to him. And when we see Helge next, he's talking to Noah and trying to tell him, I don't want to do any of this anymore. This machine that we're working on, because he's helping him like clean it up. He's like, it doesn't work. God wouldn't want any of this. It clearly doesn't work, and we don't know that it ever will. And Noah basically tells him, I understand that you're worried about doing a bad thing because you have lived through a lot of bad things. And so naturally, you are trying to cling to the idea that there is some good and some light, and you want to be a part of that. But unfortunately, that's an illusion. Life is just chaos and pain. And what we're doing is going to fix that. But you are just fooling yourself if you think that you can be part of the good and the light, because that's not real. And it's really an awful scene, because what he's saying is so nihilistic and so sad and so loaded with arrogance as well, that it seems like poor Helge is just unable to sustain any sort of response in the face of this sort of tsunami of charisma that Noah seems to have. Helge is desperate for somebody to like show him some kind of affection as well, I feel like. And when Noah hugs him, it's like simultaneously Helge is very uncomfortable, but also is getting something that he like deeply needs in his soul, that he is hungry for. And it makes me wonder if there's more to his relationship with Noah than just this like time travel stuff. If he is maybe in love with him, or at least like has the kind of crush that can border on almost being romantic, even though you're not actually attracted to the person, like an infatuation of a kind. But there is something more here, I feel, than just Helge working on a project. There is something that is craving this dude. And he like has this vein sticking out in his temple. He looks fucking nuts throughout this scene. It is quite a moment when he starts calling Helge's bluff and grabs the hand that's holding the screwdriver and tries to like jam it against his stomach. Like, go ahead, do it. Are you going to fucking do it? Just go ahead and do it. He knows he won't. And I feel so bad for this young Helge. Like, he needs somebody so bad, and he doesn't have anybody. And he's just like, he's very pathetic, you know, and in this way that I can't even be angry at, you know, it's just awful. So, all right. I hardly have any time left, guys. I have so much to talk about still. We have Jonas, who has this scene with what's her name? Juliet? Is that her name? But she is his aunt, and he can't tell her that he knows that, but he can't be with her. And it's awful because she kisses him and is like, do you really think this is terrible? Because the sparks between them are nuts. Like, they have very good chemistry. And he has to be like, no, yeah, it is bad, and walk away anyway. And I was just like, dude. And then, of course, Alexander coming to Claudia and asking for work. And she finally decides that she will give him some work because he seems like somebody who'd be willing to do some shit on the DL without telling anybody. And it turns out she's 100% correct. And he helps her solder off the doorway to the cave that we see Ulrich trying to get through in like episode 1, I think. So she makes sure that that is like totally sealed. And then I'm jumping to all of this other stuff so that we don't see it, so that I can come back and take my time with this other thing. There's Alexander, what's his name? Is it? I keep wanting to call him Boris, but it's Alexander's son, who is like in contact with Noah, and he gets visited by Claudia, who looks like hell, by the way. She is terrifying. And she tells him basically that, like, I know that your mother hates me. Honestly, she should. I really was a shitty mom. I would like to make things right. I would understand if she's not really interested, but here, give her this photo of the two of us together. I miss her and I want to fix things. And she brings the plans to the clockmaker for him to create this machine that he doesn't know yet that he will be responsible for. And the thing with Alexander's son, he goes and meets up with Noah and is like, yeah, so everything that you told me was going to happen happened. And Noah says, so have you considered my offer? And he says, yes, and seems to agree to do it, but we don't know what that deal is. So, yeah, there is a truck parked at a truck stop at one point that old Jonas, I believe, he like breaks into and begins to like fiddle around with one of the cans of waste. He like takes the lid off of it. And I'm super curious, like, is there just toxic waste in that? Because it's sort of insane to me that you would do this. It seems extremely fucking dangerous. But we don't know what it is that he's doing with this thing here. So we're going to back it up here and finally talk about the scene in which Katharina comes to Hannah's house. Now, guys, Katharina, she big mad. She assumes, because she cannot find Ulrich, that he is here fucking Hannah. Because you would, wouldn't you? You would think that. And what Hannah does, she assures her he's not here. She assures her, I broke it off. I ended it. He told me that he didn't love you anymore, that he wanted to leave you. And I told him that was crazy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing when she was saying this. Like, honestly, I cannot imagine being this kind of vicious. I can't wrap my head around the kind of energy that it would take to sustain this sort of petty rage over nothing, really. When it comes down to it, she did not have Ulrich ever in her life. It's not like Katharina stole him from her. She never had him. And she just pined after him for some reason and became obsessed with him and feels somehow entitled to be with him, as if her obsession is in and of itself enough reason to I think she thinks that her obsession proves her commitment to him and that she deserves to be with him more than Katharina because she is so committed to him. But it's not commitment to him. You are committed to yourself and the fact that you want a thing. It has nothing to do with him in the end. This has nothing to do with him at all. And the cruelty of laying the seed of doubt with a woman who is already going through what she is. Katharina's son is missing. We know she will never see him again. We know this as viewers. Except she will, but she doesn't realize. She isn't there. Her husband has just turned up missing. Shit's going left with her kids. There's that weird scene with her oldest son and the girl that he's sleeping with, who there's that whole thing going on, which I don't really care about. The show could just drop that if they feel like it. I'm fine with it. She's just going through a lot, and Hannah feels no compunction whatsoever about putting this little voice in her head that from this day forward, no matter what Ulrich says, no matter what other things she may discover about Hannah, no matter what, she will never, ever truly know if Hannah was telling the truth or not. And we know, and she knows now, that Ulrich lied his ass off to her. Up and down. I would never do that to you. I can't believe you even ask. Yada, yada, yada. All the usual shit. And she trusted him and found out that he was so full of shit that it's like practically unbelievable. So now for Hannah to tell her, he told me that he didn't love you anymore. What's she going to do? Go to that same man and ask him for the truth? I mean, the only thing that I could see is if Ulrich told her, I found out that she's the one who accused me of rape. This bitch is nuts. And I broke it off when I found out. And here's the paperwork to prove that she was the one. And I know that she was the one who planted it in your head that it was Regina. This bitch is scary and very manipulative. That might do it. But it probably will only calm most of her doubts. It will never get rid of all of them. And that is just the kind of shit relationships don't recover from. If they do, it's really rare. These two aren't doing great to begin with. I don't feel like this is going anywhere good. And it's not like I'm particularly invested in her staying with Ulrich. I mean, the dude just murdered a kid, or thought he did. And he was cheating and lying. I don't feel like it's good for the two of them to stay together. At the same time, they're both terrible in very specific ways that seem to make them work together really well. And I don't know if I want them each to inflict their terribleness on yet other people in the world. They sort of deserve each other. But in the end, fucking Hannah, who is spying on Alexander in the woods back in 86, because this bitch does not know how to mind her own business, she goes and digs up the bag that he buried with the gun and the ID and everything. And she is giving this man a massage in the present and puts the bag under the fucking headrest of the massage table so that he's looking at it. It's really quite a power move to tell somebody that you know their deepest, darkest, most dangerous secret that could undo their entire life while they are naked and at your mercy. Like, listen, that is really... I hate her so much. And he asks her what she wants, and she tells him she wants him to destroy Ulrich, and she wants Ulrich to lose everything. Which, bitch, honestly, really? This is it? This is your big wish? What? You know, and she starts off this like request with, how come some people have everything and have pleasant lives and others have nothing? First of all, Regina has cancer, which I feel has to be tied to the toxic waste, but who knows? So, you know, not money isn't everything. I do believe money is most things. Don't get me wrong. But she's acting like you guys have nothing to worry about. Well, one of them might be about to die very young. So yeah, they do. But also, destroying Ulrich doesn't actually fix any of her life. She says something about, like, I can't even pay my electric bill. Blackmail him for money, bitch. But don't, like, you're trying to make it like, oh, life isn't fair. And then you talk about this petty thing with Ulrich. No, life isn't fair. And this thing with Ulrich has nothing to do with that, really. You're just pissy because you wanted a thing and you didn't get it because he didn't want anything to do with you in that respect. Don't try and like reframe your obsession with this dude as like injustices of the world. It isn't. You're being an incel, you know, like get the fuck out of here. So yeah, I just can't get over how awful Hannah is. Like, she is just really like no holds barred I am going to be as terrible as I know how to be. And I am dying for Jonas to figure out what she's up to. I want Jonas to like get a clear view of his mother and realize that she's pulling all this shit. I don't know what that would do. I don't know how he would react. I don't know what he could do. But I need her to be revealed for what she is. I'm dying. All right. So I'm over time, way over. Thank you again to Jill so much for commissioning this episode. I appreciate you guys all listening so much. I hope that you're enjoying it. I'm just so excited about getting to watch yet another one later tonight. Can't wait. And I will see you all soon with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.